Thank you so much, Olga, and thank you, Latvia, again for inviting me. It's coming back home, so paldies, Latvia. One correction, it's not prototyping, it's pretotyping, and that's an important distinction, and we will talk about it and why it's a real word. So if you type it into Google, you will see all the information about pretotyping. Well, anyway, I am so happy to be sharing this new movement of pretotyping with all of you. I'm very passionate about it. I think this is the way to go to minimize failures in a startup community, or to maximize failures to make it faster so that you can get to the right idea and the right it. So let me start by telling you a little bit about Alberto Savoia. I will be channeling Alberto here today, and I will talk about his story and his experience in a minute, but pretotyping is his brainchild, so I want to put credits where the credits are due, and I was introduced to him and the pretotyping in 2014, and there's no looking back. I've been teaching this all over the world, and I'm just really happy to be now here in Latvia doing it. And as Olga said, I come from many different experiences. I spent over a decade in Silicon Valley at the right time, at the right place in the 90s, helping to build companies, went IPO twice, lost it all in 2000. So the failure is very familiar to me. I've been then working at the university building accelerators. I worked at the Science Center working with 22 universities, working with global companies, and now I run my own company called World Upstart that helps build the right innovation programs and helps companies from around the world to enter US market. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Alberto's experience. Just like me, Alberto is an immigrant to the United States. He came to the States from Italy. And in 1999, he started his very first company. He founded this startup. He raised $3 million in Series A, and 18 months later, he sold it for $400 million in acquisition. So he thought to himself, I am so good. This is easy. So he then went on to be the first Google grown-up hire, and he is the guy behind the Google AdWords. He was the first director of engineering at Google. He launched AdWords. He got many, numerous awards for it. He also worked at Google Analytics, and so he thought, I am really brilliant. So after that, he decided to start another company. He worked on this company for 5 years. He went to the best of the best. He raised $25 million from Sequoia Capital in Series A, B, and C. He ran this company, as I said, for 5 years. And after 5 years, it went bankrupt. So Alberto, being a really analytical guy, stepped back and said, whoa, what just happened? Why the failure? And so he looked back at his experiences, and he came up with the idea of pretotyping, how you can test the market to see if actually customers need what you're working on, what you're offering them, before you spend time or money. So he is back at the Google right now, and he made sure that pretotyping is a real word, the real technique. He's teaching it now at Stanford Business School, but he also made sure that every new product that Google puts on the market goes through pretotyping first. You can learn about pretotyping if you Google it. There's also a book. I will put it on a slide at the end of my talk. So let's talk about the law of failure. And for you, fellow entrepreneurs, I have a really bad news. Most of new ideas fail, and most of new companies fail. The statistic, unfortunately, is very discouraging. About 90% of new products fail in the market. 4 out of 5 companies lose investors' money. We know that over 90% of mobile apps don't make any money. And projects disappear within 4 years from the market. So unfortunately, it happens even to the best. Even the companies with the large marketing budgets, with the really big commercialization teams fail. This is an example of all the failed products by Microsoft, or by Google. Funny enough, Microsoft keeps tab on it, and they are putting this page together of all the failed Google products. You will not be surprised that there's also a page for all failed Microsoft products. Google is keeping a tab on that. It's a little bit of a war between the two. Even companies like Coca-Cola and Pepsi fail at some of their products. So even if you have all the right ingredients of the product, the market research, all the polls that you did, if one of these ingredients is not right, your company will fail. So how do you assure that every single ingredient you're looking at when you're building your company is right? So Alberta calls it flop. Basically, flop is a failure in launch, a failure in operations, and a failure in premise. Now, I will be spending an hour here with you on stage, and as much as possible, I want to make it interactive. Now, I am in an empty audience. All of you are watching me on the computer, but through the comment section, I ask you to please type your answers to some of my questions, because I think it helps all of us if we can make it as a dialogue. And I will ask Olga to read me your answers. So I really hope that you, audience, will participate in this. If anyone can give me an example of failure in launch, that would be wonderful, or failure in operations. So let's give it maybe 30 seconds to see if people will react, because I would love to see if you engaged. So if you're thinking about the failure in launch, so to launch a new product, you need an A team, you need a great marketing strategy, you need a great sales team, right? So failure in launch, and Olga, tell me if you have any answers, but if not, I'll just keep on going. Failure in launch is that you failed to put together this right team, for example, right? Okay. Failure in operation. Okay, you launched your product, and then what? Maybe you failed in creating the right customer service, or you failed in putting together the right supply chain and logistics, right? So that would be the failure in operations. But now, what is the failure in premise? The failure in premise, just like it suggests, is, yep, you have something.
Karina, we have one comment by Laura, Microsoft mobile phone.
That's a really excellent example of the failure in launch, absolutely, yep. Very good. Thank you, Laura. So failure in premise is no one wants what you're trying to put on the market. You created something, but there's no demand in it. That is the failure in premise, and that's what we're going to address today. All right. That's why the slogan of the Pretotyping is so important. And the slogan is, make sure you're building the right it before you build it right. All right. So when you are thinking of a new product or a new service, what do you usually do? You go and you ask your friends, and you ask your colleagues, and you maybe put together a poll, or maybe you put together an opinion group. And so Alberta calls it a thought land. So you're sharing your idea with people, and what you get back are opinions, right? They're just opinions. So famously, Henry Ford said, if I had asked my customers what they wanted, they would have asked for a faster horse, right? So opinions is what you get. So do not ask. Here's a great example that's been taught in every business school on the planet. And I lived actually right through it in Palo Alto. At the very early days of internet, there was a company called Webvan. The idea of webvan was revolutionary at that time. And so the idea was that you can order groceries online with a couple clicks, and they will be at your door in 30 minutes. Brilliant. So they went to all the investors, and every investor thought it was such a great idea. They showered with money. Goldman Sachs gave them 122 million. Sequoia Capital invested into them. They went IPO in 1999. So again, everyone thought it was a fantastic idea until 2 years later, in July of 2001, the company went bankrupt. So Alberta calls it false positive, right? And we will talk about this company in a few minutes. But basically, what Webvan did, they created refrigerated warehouses in 26 cities around the United States. They bought refrigerated trucks. They built an enormous infrastructure before they launched this project. All right, here's another idea. Company that went to every investor, and every investor turned them down because investors really didn't understand the premise of this company. And so they voiced their opinion, and I said, bad idea. Now, we all know what this company is. The company is Twitter, one of the most successful companies on Earth right now. So we call this false negative. Again, you went, you asked investors, they voiced back their opinions. So get out of this thought land as soon as possible, and instead of opinions, get data from the market. Once you get data, you can share this data with investors, and I will teach you how to do it. And instead of questions, you create small actions that help you get this data from the market. And instead of ideas, you create prototypes, and you recreate and recreate those prototypes until one of them really hit. All right, so what is prototyping? It's the validation of the market appeal and actual usage, actual data, with the absolutely smallest possible investment in time and money. So instead of weeks and months, you might spend days or a few weeks. And instead of writing code and creating your product, you basically, ideally, do not write any code and still get this data from the market. Now, the word is new, prototyping, but the idea is not new. And this is one of my favorite examples of that. If you remember company IBM, in 1980s, IBM was in the market of big mainframes, big computer machines that will take an entire room for one computer. And so IBM decided that they want to go into business of personal computers. Funny enough, they thought that their barrier to market would be the fact that no one knew how to type. They were specially trained, usually women, the typists, right, the secretaries. Maybe writers knew how to type, but the majority of population didn't. And so IBM decided that for their personal computer, what they need to do is create this product of speech to text. And that will basically break their barrier to market, and that's how they're going to build computer. So they went around and they asked all their potential customers, would you buy this product for thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars? And what do you know? The customer said, of course we would. What a great idea, right? They created the polls. They brought in opinion leaders. Everyone said, fantastic idea. We'll spend lots of money on it. Go for it. So IBM invited customers to come in and try their new product. So customers would come in, and they would speak to the microphone, and the words would appear on the screen by magic. What the customers didn't know was that there was a woman sitting behind the curtain typing everything that they were speaking. So instead of building the product, spending months and months, possibly years, and millions of dollars, IBM decided to fake it to see if customers actually would be buying it. And after spending a few days testing it, customers came back and said, you know what? We reconsidered. This is not the product that we want. Our throat hurts after all these days of speaking. The noise level is actually pretty bad. The confidentiality issues. So thanks, but no thanks. So by faking it, without writing a line of code, IBM tested the market and figured out that this is not the right product. The premise was wrong. I just love this example a lot. So before prototyping, everyone said, absolutely, we will buy it. After prototyping, it turned out that no one wants it. And so, as Alberto learned when he spent 5 years trying to run the company that actually ran to the ground, it is really important to fail as early as you can so that you can try again and again and again until you hit that winning idea. Another example, also from an old time ago, a long time ago, is with the Palm Pilot. Now, the young of you maybe don't know this, but before the cell phones, before the smartphones, before the iPhones, there was something called Palm Pilot, which is the personal assistant, and it's actually a prototype for the phone, that will do only a couple things. It will have your contacts, it will have your schedule, and it will have your to-do list. So the guy who invented it, believe it or not, invented a tablet first, and the tablet failed miserably. So he decided before he launched the Palm Pilot, he went to his garage, he took a wooden block, he glued a piece of paper on it, and he carried this block with him for 2 weeks. And every time he would meet someone new, he would take out this block with a pencil, and he would write the contact information. If he would schedule a lunch with someone, he would take out the block and he would write down the time. And if he thought of to-do list, he would do the same. And that's how he tested, A, what kind of functionality he would actually use it for, and B, would he use it at all? And that's how Palm Pilot came to be. And as we know, it was really successful at the time. So people always ask me, what's the difference between the prototyping and the prototyping? It's easy to confuse the two. So prototyping, the investment on your part is in hours or days, as opposed to with prototype, where you spend days or weeks putting it together. The main question is, would we use it? Would they, customer, use it, as opposed to, can we build it? And the deliverable is the working prototype, as opposed to a working prototype. Okay? So let's go through some of the samplings of prototyping technique, and I will give you more of a case studies as we go. So one of the technique is called mechanical Turk. My IBM example is exactly it. So the funny story behind it, for those of you that may not be familiar with that, there was an emperor of Austria who was very much into gadgets. I think it was in 1800s. He was an avid chess player, and so someone gave him a box that could play chess with emperor by itself. So emperor played chess with this box machine. What the emperor didn't know was that there was actually a little man sitting in the box moving the chess pieces. So hence the name Mechanical Turk. And so, as I said, the IBM example is just that. All right, Pinocchio prototype is what I talked about when I talk about the Palm Pilot, where you pretend to have a product in physical form. You carry it with you to see if you're going to use it. When Amazon Echo asked Alberta to see if he would invest into it, what Alberta did, he went to the supermarket, he bought a can of beans, he put a black paper on it, he put it in his bedroom, and he pretended that it is a product. So he would wake up in the morning and ask, what's the weather today? Or what's the news, right? And he tested if he would actually use something like that. It turned out that he would, and so he invested. He himself, before writing a book on prototyping, actually used this fake door technique where he created a web page, and he said, you know, here is the prototyping PDF file. Are you guys interested? Let me see how many downloads I could get. And so he put it for free on the web through the page, and he obviously followed all the Google Analytics, how many clicks, where from, and that's how he decided that there is enough interest for him to write a book. And now it's a book that you can buy on Amazon. Another good example is the company called Zappos. I failed to check if they're available in Europe, but it's a big company in the United States. It's the company that started by selling shoes online. Now I think it sells more than just shoes. But the way it started is very interesting. The founder decided that he wants to sell sneakers on the internet. Again, early days of the internet, revolutionary idea. So what he did, he created a web page. He put pictures of sneakers on the web page. And when people will click and will buy, he would drive to the store, buy the sneakers, and send it to them. He didn't make a dime on it, but he tested the premise. And the premise was great. People were buying it. So that's how he tested and started his empire. Okay? Another technique is one-night stand. And that is a technique where you decide not to roll out your product everywhere, but test it in one location with a very simple offer. So a big computer seller, Best Buy in the United States, they're in every city, decided to test their new service of buying old gaming equipment for vouchers for new one. And instead of rolling it out everywhere, they rented one, or actually they used one parking spot next to their store in one location in Florida for 1 weekend. And they tested this idea, and after a weekend, it became apparent that they don't want to do it. They want to outsource it to another company. Airbnb, we all use Airbnb, what a great concept. But Airbnb started by few guys buying air mattress, putting it on the floor and putting an ad, free air mattress, free space to stay, right after the crash in 2008. And what do you know? There were 3 takers for the space. And that's how they tested the idea that people will not be shy of staying in somebody else's apartment and sharing the living situation and renting a bed. So that's how they tested that. Another technique is called impersonator. Pretotype, and that is when you take existing product and sort of put a new wrapper on it. A good example of that is Tesla. Before launching Tesla, Elon Musk famously took Lotus car. He put an electric engine in the front of it, and he said, if I build it, would you buy it? And he collected checks for $5,000 before he even started any manufacturing. Because if customers can write a check in anticipation of the product, that's a great, great indication that the customers really want it. So having that skin in the game becomes really important. Crowdfunding uses the same concept, right? You put it on a crowdfunding, and if customers are interested, they actually can pay for it before you even build your product. All right, I'm going to show you a little movie right now. And then I would like to ask you, what kind of lessons did you learn from this movie? Now, let me start by telling you it's bordering on illegal. The guy in Palo Alto who runs a little design firm that designs products bought an Ikea shirt, like if he is an employee of Ikea, and on the internet, and he went for 1 weekend to Ikea in Palo Alto, and he put his product on a shelf there, and watch what happened next.
Okay.
Are these from here?
Yeah, they're on the rack over there.
Oh. Sorry about that. So they
Oh, no
said
worries.
that this isn't Ikea, so you can just. I
Oh.
think somebody just left them. So
Oh, for real?
yeah. So you just have to pay for that.
Huh, there's a whole stack of them back there, though.
Really?
Free wall hub day at Ikea.
Right.
How'd you get that, by the way?
Just online, eBay.
Oh yeah, this. I
Get
mean,
anything online.
This is actually, I don't know, I used to like that one better though, but
Yeah, it's cleaner.
this,
No, I mean clean like it's like no stripes, you know, just
Yeah.
plain.
yeah. Nice, I thought you was working here. I was gonna say,
No, no.
introduce myself and stuff.
Yeah, no, thanks though. I'm Justin, by the way.
Enjoy.
Nice to meet
If
you.
you need help, just let me know.
Cool, thanks, man.
Did you get that audio?
All right. So let me ask you, what kind of lesson can you learn by doing it for one weekend in Ikea? I hope some of you typed some answers because I would be really curious to know what you think. I think you can learn a lot from staging this experiment. And again, I don't encourage it because I think it is bordering on illegal, but yeah, let's hear it, Olga.
Yeah, we have a first comment. Basically, evaluate your risk and reward, the trade-off between the two. Risk-reward.
Yeah.
Thank you, Laura.
So yes, there is a risk associated with that, and I will tell you how you can mitigate it in a second. But the reward is what? What kind of data are you trying to get from this experiment? So you saw people actually taking this product and putting it in a basket. That indicates that they were ready to pay for it. So that's a huge indication if people are actually interested in your product. So you can test what kind of people, young, old, men, women, children, right? You can test your demographic audience. You can also do it maybe in an urban setting or more rural setting and see which audience, which customer is better. You can switch price points during the day to see if it makes any difference. You can get so much data out of running this one experiment than you can do by just putting it on the market and waiting for the customers to do it. Do we have any other ideas? No? All right. Moving on then. But so who lost in this experiment? In my view, Ikea lost. They lost on the revenue, you know? So better and more legal to me would be to go to a potential store if you have a consumer product and say, let me rent this shelf from you for a weekend. I put my product there. If anyone will buy it, we'll split the revenue. I mean, that would be a more ethical way to do it, and then you can test your product that way. In the United States, we have a chain of stores called Whole Foods, and a lot of new food product are actually doing it. They would come in, they would put it on a shelf, and they will see if customers are interested in the product or not. Very good way to get real data from the market. Another good example is this company that has a software for investors. And it's a very sophisticated software that they produce right now, but they started by putting it on Excel and sending it to investors to see if people are interested in this type of analytics. And the result was, yes, a lot of people ask for it, and that's how they knew that the product actually has traction, and then they build the product with the data that they collected. One of my favorite examples is the company called Buffer. Buffer lets you schedule your tweets and your LinkedIn and your Facebook messages in batch and then send it at specific date and time that you decide. Before building the product, before doing anything, Buffer they did it very smartly. They put 3 web pages together. It took them minutes. All right, the first page said, this is what Buffer does. Click on what you would like to do with our software. Then they were very ethical about it. They said, sorry, you caught us too early. The product is not ready yet, but please leave your information. We'll let you know when it's ready. So that way, they already collected first takers, first customers, potentially interested in that. And then they did something even smarter. Then they put a page that asked, what would you pay for it? And they tested different pricing points. And today, Buffer is a very successful company. So with the prototyping, we're putting this premise on its head. It used to be that we thought, how can we make money? And then can we build it? And then we will figure out if anyone is interested in this. But with the prototyping technique, we're turning it on its head, and we're asking first, will they use it? Are they interested? Does anyone actually needs it? And then when the indication is that, yes, there is a really strong indication that market is interested in that, then we can figure out with the prototype or minimum viable product if we can build it. And then once we're doing that, we can figure out the best business strategy to make money on it. So this is a really good comparison of what you get with prototyping or without. And so without prototyping, you had much less failures, but you also have much, much, much less successes. Because it's really important to fail very fast. You don't want to spend 5 years building the company only to realize that no one is interested in your product. So failing fast within weeks so you can try something else and try something else is the better strategy. And that's where prototyping comes to play a very important role. Now, there is some specific data measurements that you can take from your prototyping experiments. There will be a little bit of math, so bear with me, but it's not too intimidating. So basically, there are 2 things that you need to measure. You need to measure the initial level of interest from your customers, and then you need to measure the ongoing level of interest. And so the initial level of interest is, let's say you advertise to X number of people, but only Y number of people actually clicked on it to see if, that they're interested in your product. So that conversion is your initial level of interest. So if, let's say, we advertise to 1,000 people and 741 clicked on it, it's a really good indication that people are interested in it. But that's not enough, because people can click and be interested in something once. We all know this late night TV purchases when people just buy useless stuff. What's really important is that people are continue to be interested in your product. And that's where we can measure the ongoing level of interest. Are they coming back? Are they clicking again? Are they ordering from you again? And that becomes very, very important. So let's collectively try to prototype that very famous web van company. How would we go before we blow $100 million of investment money? How would we stage the prototyping for the service that now these days is just part of our lives? We all order groceries, especially with COVID, on the internet. But if you're just like a company just starting to think about it, before we build all these refrigerated warehouses and trucks and hire a lot of people, how would we go about trying to see if people are interested? So I'll pause a little to see if anyone gives us their ideas. But again, if you think through this Ikea experiment, so maybe what we're going to do, we're going to obviously build a website where we can explain it and advertise it and put products and groceries on it. So that's a little bit of investment, but nothing compared to 100 million. And then I would suggest we choose 2 different markets. We will choose urban versus suburban or rural to see what kind of customers would be interested in this service more. Okay. Olga, speak up if you have any other people there. Okay, good. So it's very important before you build any prototyping exercises to figure out what kind of questions you want to ask and what kind of data do you want to collect. So if we step back and think, OK, we're building this website. We're putting all these products there. What are we trying to collect? What kind of data we're trying to collect? So we want to see the percentage of people, the initial level of interest that they will click on it. That's really important. Then we want to see if they will come back and how often they will use it. The ongoing level of interest, also really important. Then again, we want to compare maybe urban, suburban environment. Yeah. What kind of product are they interested? Maybe there's product that they're not interested in at all. And finally, what is the average transaction price? Are they interested in high-end, low-end, what, right? So we can get answers to those questions without blowing $100 million. So let's build a website, and then people will click, and then they will maybe we'll see the difference. Let's say we'll do it San Francisco, Palo Alto, or maybe we'll do Riga, Ventspils. And then once the orders are coming in, let's get our friends and family into their cars. Let's go and buy this product and deliver it, right? So we can use our existing resources. But again, by using our existing resources, we're getting a lot of data out of this exercise, right? And then we can run this for a few weeks as opposed to years. And I guarantee you, at the end of 4 weeks, you will get so much information. So in this experiment, for example, we ran it. Our initial level of interest was pretty OK. A lot of people clicked on it once. And then we ran it for 4 weeks. And we see maybe that interest is diminishing. So that indicates to us maybe this idea is not such a hot idea. This is all hypothetical. Of course, we know that the services now exist. So why do I love this prototyping so much? So I work with a lot of startup companies, and I work with a lot of investors. And I think this can change your dialogue with potential seed investor. Seed investor is the investor that risks the most. They invest into the earliest of stages before the product, the market is proven. So it's really hard to raise the seed investment, the initial investment. So I suggest if you build the prototype, you can go to the investor and you can say, dear Mr. or Miss, I hope, investor, here is my plan. This is my idea. I'm going to stage this prototype. Invest $5,000 into this prototype, and I will run it for 4 weeks, and I will come back and I will give you the results, right? And so based on the results, then we can see either we need to pivot and run different experiment, or if the data is really great, then we can we can proceed and you can invest $50,000 and so forth. So it changes your dialogue. It shows you as a credible entrepreneur who thinks about data before approaching investor. And so if you agree upon specific milestones for your prototype, then if the data is encouraging, investor will be more than willing to invest. If it's discouraging, you might change something in your premise. You may stage different experiment. And if it's ambiguous, you keep on prototyping until you get the real data. All right, so let's practice. And here I really, really, really do want your participation. So I want to run this experiment with you, the prototype, as if McDonald's would decide to put a new product on the menu, McPasta or McSpaghetti. How would you advise McDonald's to prototype it before buying a kilo of pasta or before training any of the chefs how to make it? So I'm going to pause here a little bit, and I hope we hear some ideas from the participants. How would they prototype this? And Olga, give me indication if anyone is actually answering.
While our audience perhaps is suggesting their offers, can I also suggest one?
Yes, please. Anyone here, please suggest.
Because we still do have some people here, right? Well, I think I would offer a small sample of this pasta along with the main order, just to sample it out, to try.
OK, so how would you do it without buying any pasta? Remember, you don't want to spend any money, if possible, for Pretotype. You can do it without buying it at all.
Zero cost, right?
Zero cost.
At zero cost.
At zero cost. So the first thing you probably will do, you will put it on a menu, right? OK, so we'll put it on a menu, and we'll see how many people order it. You know, people order it, you say, we're so sorry we're out of it today, but here's an extra Coke or extra French fries. And you register how many people out of your entire customers that day ordered pasta. Yes?
So we have some options from Einars, making it available in the app, ordering or homepage, and see if any orders come in. And the same can be in stores, so just as you were voicing, right? And another comment is to survey the interest of customers. So I would assume perhaps standing in the store and actually physically surveying the customers as they order something else, if they would one day like some pasta.
Okay.
That's my interpretation of
so survey. So you can survey customers. Yeah, if you survey, you will get back opinions. But if customer actually orders it from the menu, then you know that customer is ready to pay. So that's the difference between just surveying, clicking on an app, or ready to pay, right? Skin in the game is really important. All right, so you put it on a menu, you register how many people actually order it, you run it again maybe in a suburban and urban setting. And then there's one really important question that you still need to ask if you're running it, let's say, for a weekend or a week. Anyone? Anyone here? All right. And that question, again, initial level of interest and ongoing level of interest. That question is, have you ordered this from us before? Right? And that question indicates to you if people are really excited and they really want it. In the McDonald's case, it turned out that people are not that excited and don't really want it. So that's why we don't see McSpaghetti on the menu. But that's a great example of what you can do with your potential product. All right, let me run very quickly through all these techniques, and then we will get to another topic that is dear to my heart. So fake door, we talked about it. It's a web page, right, that you can collect all sorts of analytics from it. Pinocchio, that's the sort of the physical object that you can pretend is the product. The mechanical Turk, which is the faking it, the IBM technique. Dropbox had a huge trouble fundraising initially, and so what they did, they put a simple video together to show how the product works. And that was a great example of prototyping, and they got funding that way. Instead of building a big infrastructure like WebVan, create a partnership maybe with existing company that has already something like this in place, and you can put your services on top of it to test it. Then impersonator is the technique like with Tesla, where you just put a new wrapper on existing product to see if people will be interested in that. Crowdfunding, we talk about it, skin in the game, people actually putting money or people sharing their email addresses. All of this becomes really important. All right, so for those of you that maybe heard me speak before, this will not be a news to you, but for new audience members, this is one of my very, very favorite topic. And And that is an example of why it's so important to prototype. So back in the 90s, there was a very first sort of big incubator in the United States called Idea Lab out of Los Angeles. They incubated hundreds of companies. They had 45 companies went IPO, which is like a big deal, right? A lot of companies failed, too. And so because they had such a great number of companies, they can step back and analyze their data to see what was the reason for the failure, what was the reason for success. So this is an example of all these companies that they incubated over the years. And they came up with 5 most important elements, most important ingredients for a success of a company. And so I'm going to put this 5 on the slide in a minute, and then I will ask Olga to start the poll, and I would want you to tell me which of the 5 are the most important. So just rate them from the order of importance, please. So the drum roll, the 5 are not a big surprise. It's an initial idea, the team that executes it, the business model, the funding, and the timing. So 5 elements. Please go to the poll and tell us which one of the 5 you think are the most important. So the idea, the initial premise, right? Either product or service. Is that really important? The team that executes it, your executive team. Then business model, whether you can actually make money on it, funding, to help you execute, and timing. So tell me which one. All right, I see we have some poll, maybe, yeah. Okay, all right. Latvia, you're doing so well. Or actually people around the world, I guess, right? Or maybe you heard my previous speech. The poll, let's close the poll right now. You're absolutely right. Timing is number 1. Timing is number 1. And that's the thing that you can control the least. You can control your executive team, right? You can control your execution, your business model. Timing is the one that you have the least control over. And that's why it is so important to test that timing before you put the product on the market. Think about timing. So with the Idea Lab, they had a company that did exactly what YouTube did, but it failed. And it was just 6 months earlier than YouTube. It failed because the broadband was not there yet. And then once the technology caught up, then the YouTube became a sensation. Think again back to Airbnb. Before the crash and the crisis of 2008, no one in their right mind would think that they can share their apartment, their couch with a stranger, right? And now we all use it. So timing becomes really important. And then you will be interested to see that while still important, funding is the least important of these 5 ingredients, right? So I found this data to be very illuminating. And so when you think about your company and how you still need all 5 elements, think of what's the most important and how to test it. And that's why I'm so excited about prototyping, because it lets you test the timing. So if you look at other data that they collected, the number 1 reason why companies failed was that no one needed the product or services. Again, validating that you need to have something like prototyping to see if you're on the right path. So if you like this talk, you can actually order the book, or you can read still free PDF. Find the Pretotyping group. There's so many of them. They're very popular in Scandinavia now. You can start one here in Latvia. It is now took Silicon Valley by storm. Again, it's being taught at multiple business schools. And I'm just so grateful that you gave me this opportunity to share this technique with you today. And happy to answer any questions. If there are questions, we have about 9 minutes left. But that's it for the Pretotyping today.
So we do not have any questions at the moment. Perhaps a few are coming in. Karina, I really apologize for making this confusion in the very beginning between pretotyping and building the right versus prototyping, building it right. But actually, it's a situation when I'm sorry, not so sorry, because I'm glad I made this mistake, and you had a chance to emphasize the difference between the two. It's quite eye-opening for me. So I do hope for other people it was the same.
Yeah, it worked really well. Like we staged it, but we did.
Well, it wasn't staged. It was an honest mistake, and pardon me my ignorance. But now I know better.
Absolutely.
We still do not have questions from
That's
the
okay,
audience,
people.
but we have a comment from Einers saying that thank you. It was very interesting. So.
My pleasure.
Yeah. It's
very
hard to stay engaged in this new setup, but from what I understand, quite a few have been.
What I would just say as the ending is that I encourage, obviously, all the entrepreneurs to prototype, to test your product before you put it on the market. And it would be great if someone will take a lead and create maybe a prototyping meetup where you can get together and share ideas how to do it, because that support is vital in an entrepreneurial community. So it would be great to see, and I'm happy to be invited to maybe help some of the people to prototype if you will organize and create this movement here in Latvia. That will be my parting words. But thank you again for inviting me. Visu labu.
Thank you, Karina. Thank you. A virtual round of applause to Karina. And